There is a place on Earth where a bird once walked through the forest and stood nearly 3 meters tall. It could not fly. It had no wings, and for thousands of years nothing on these islands could seriously challenge it, until something arrived from across the ocean. Imagine a forest in Aotearoa, New Zealand, silent except for the rustling of leaves. Then, a huge shadow moves between the trees. A moa steps into the clearing. It doesn't know it is living through its final generations, because somewhere beyond the forest, humans have arrived. Long before cities, roads, farms, or sheep, New Zealand was an extraordinary experiment in evolution. The islands had been isolated for tens of millions of years. And unlike most large landmasses, New Zealand had very few native land mammals. That changed the rules. Birds began filling roles that mammals occupy elsewhere. Some became climbers, some became predators, and some became enormous herbivores. The most spectacular were the moa. But moa was not a single species. Scientists recognized 9 species, ranging from relatively small birds to enormous giants. Some lived in forests, others occupied grasslands, alpine environments, wetlands, and coastal areas. And the largest could reach around 3 meters in height. The largest MOA were unlike any bird alive today. Their bodies were massive, their legs were powerful, and they had lost all traces of wings. For an animal this large, flight was no longer necessary. It had become a walking giant. Females of some moa species were dramatically larger than males. One South Island giant moa species had females that could reach roughly 250 kilograms. To put that into perspective, this was a bird heavier than many adult humans. But the moa was not simply a monster wandering through the forest. It was part of an entire ecosystem. It browsed on plants, leaves, and fruit. It moved through forests and open landscapes. And for much of its existence, it had almost no reason to fear humans. There was, however, one terrifying exception. High above the forest lived something almost as unbelievable as the moa itself. Haast's eagle, the largest eagle known to science. Its wingspan may have reached around 3 meters. Females could weigh between 12 and 14 kilograms, and its feet were equipped with enormous talons. This was not an eagle hunting rabbits. Its primary prey appears to have included moa. Scientists believe it could attack extremely large birds, using its powerful legs and claws to strike them. For thousands of years, this predator and its prey were locked together in an evolutionary balance. The moa was enormous. The eagle became enormous too. One was the giant of the forest. The other was the giant of the sky. Then, around the late 13th century, everything changed. Polynesian voyagers reached New Zealand. They had crossed thousands of kilometers of Pacific Ocean and settled in a land unlike the islands they had left behind. And waiting for them were moa. For these first settlers, the giant birds were an extraordinary source of food. Moa were hunted. Their meat was eaten. Their bones were used to make tools and ornaments. Their eggshells were also used. Archaeological sites preserve evidence of this relationship. At places such as Wairau Bar, researchers have found butchered moa remains associated with some of the earliest Polynesian settlement evidence in New Zealand. But there was a problem. Moa reproduced too slowly to withstand intense hunting pressure. And the humans who had just arrived were entering an ecosystem that had never experienced anything like this before. The first generations of settlers could hunt moa, and at first, there seemed to be no reason to believe the supply would ever end. But every adult bird removed from the population mattered, every egg destroyed mattered, and every nesting area altered by humans mattered. People also changed the landscape. Fire transformed areas of vegetation. Forests were cleared, habitats changed. The pressure was not caused by a single event. It was a chain of changes unfolding across the islands. And the evidence left behind is striking. Moa bones are abundant in early archaeological sites. Then, they disappear. The great birds that had once been everywhere simply stop appearing in the archaeological record. Now imagine the final generations. There is no historical record telling us exactly what the last moa saw. We cannot know its name. We cannot know its age. We cannot know where it lived. But we can reconstruct the world around it from archaeology and fossils. Perhaps it walked through a forest that had once been much larger. Perhaps it searched for food while humans occupied nearby settlements. Perhaps it followed trails through vegetation where Moa had walked for thousands of years before it.